Hey everybody, we're here for the Cap and Kirk show, and our guitar lick that just was playing was by our guitar licker, Chris Godby. Tonight we're going to talk about Journey because they're awesome, and Steve Perry is trying to make a comeback as a soloist. So later in the podcast, we will talk a little bit about Steve's new album. So tonight we have, for my crew, my motley crew, we have Therese.
Hello.
We have Lola.
Hi.
We have Mr. Porter.
Howdy.
And Brianna is sitting in. She doesn't have a mic, but she's here.
Monitoring.
She's monitoring things. And I don't know if Mr. Professor Plum will be here or not. But we can never tell when he's going to show up. Sometimes he's drank a little too much alcohol and he doesn't make it. So, before we get started, I just want to say how thankful we are that you listeners are here, because this podcast is all about music, and you love music, we love music. That's why we're here. You might know more about music than us. We just want to talk about music, and we're really glad you're here. So, Journey. Let's kick it off with our first track. All right. Just like all the Journey songs, you've probably already figured out what it is. It's Lights.
When the lights go down in the city and the sun shines on the bay.
Interesting fact about Lights. Everybody knows that they wrote it about San Francisco. In reality, they wrote it about Los Angeles. Los Angeles didn't sound good, and so they changed it to the city by the bay, and it became the song about San Francisco. Why they wrote it about Los Angeles, I don't know, because they were from San Francisco.
Is you feeling? Are you feeling? You're feeling that way too. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You're feeling that way.
This is Feeling That Way Too. It was wrote by Steve Perry and Greg Raleigh. This is Greg Raleigh singing. He was actually one of their lead singers back in the day. Before Steve Perry got into the band, Raleigh was the main lead singer. What's even more interesting about Greg Raleigh is he was from Santana. He and Neil Schon, the guitarist from Journey, started in Santana, and they were founders. Raleigh was a founder of the beginning of Santana, and Raleigh sang lead on Black Magic Woman, Oyo Como Va. I've always loved Greg Raleigh's voice. I think early Journey, where him and Steve Perry were singing, are fantastic. So here's Perry kicking in. What do you think, Lola? Isn't that amazing that he was from Santana?
If you don't love Santana, you're crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, I mean, I didn't know that. I mean, I just studied for the podcast, and I was like, are you kidding me? The main guy from the big hits of Santana?
I didn't know that either, but...
And he literally left Santana in the middle of the height of their fame because he felt like they weren't going a direction he wanted to go. He was at Woodstock with Santana, singing lead. It was big time. He and Neil Schon left, started Journey, and the band literally went nowhere for years. They were way different sounding than this. They were kind of considered progressive rock. They had a following, but they weren't getting big. So go ahead and switch tracks. So this is Anytime.
I lived in Utah during this.
This song would come on immediately after Feeling That Way Too. And I mean without any break, and it was fantastic. Cars used to do that on a few of their songs. The radio stations can't play them that way, though. It's a real drag. Anyways, so Anytime was wrote by Greg Raleigh. Greg Raleigh was also the keyboardist of Journey. And he had a fancy organ and had a really good sound going.
So Greg and Steve actually were in the band at the same time.
Yes.
For several years, it looks like.
Yes.
So.
Greg and Steve were in the band together. And I just love the way Greg sounds. Greg is still out singing. He's now been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. Once for Journey in 2017. Something like in 98 for Santana. He's been in the Ringo Starr Band. He's been in many bands since Journey. He left Journey at the height of Journey. Once again, leaving a band when it was super popular just because they were starting to go in a direction he felt was wrong. And he's even said, I don't understand it. You're making money, you've got fame, and all of a sudden it's not enough for me, and he leaves. He doesn't know why. But I found that really interesting. All right.
Air guitar time.
Lola, next song, please. This song is Patiently. We're on the album Infinity right now, from 1978, when in about 77 they had finally decided we're not going anywhere. We've got to get a lead singer. For a little while they tried out Robert Fleischman. He actually wrote Will in the Sky, and but they didn't like his sound. They fired him, and they were having trouble finding a singer. In the meantime, Steve Perry had been in a couple bands. One of them, the one he was in, was called something Alien Project. He thought that band was going to go somewhere, and then the bassist got killed in a horrible accident, and the band disbanded. Perry freaked out, realized he was never going to make it in music, and went to work at his dad's turkey farm. And that's where he was going to end up. He was sure music wasn't going to work out for him.
Want to hear a turkey?
He also...
Probably sound pretty good in those headphones.
We did hear a turkey just then, for sure. Okay, so Steve Perry was following the band Journey. He loved them. He loved their sound. It was not the sound you're hearing now. It was the sound of 3 other albums where they sounded progressive rock. And he would go to all their concerts, and he loved them. Somehow, a tape of his with him singing vocals ended up in Journey's manager's hand. His name was Herbie Herbert, He'd also been in Santana. He left Santana being their manager when Sean and Raleigh left Santana. Herbert found Steve Perry, decided this is the man, this is who we need. So he showed them Perry singing, and Neil Schon goes, wow, this guy sounds like a crooner. We do not need a crooner in our band. We just need a guy that can sing loud. He's all wrong. And the manager, who was really part of their family, from what I hear, he was amazingly cool. And he just said, nope, this is your lead singer, deal with it. And so Steve Perry came and he met with Neil Schon, and they hit it off, and they wrote that song Patiently together. And that was really their first song, the one that just played. So that's kind of cool.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year or more. I hope she holds on a little longer.
Well, here's the song that was really what got everybody listening to him on the radio.
Yes.
You got any idea what the name is?
I forgot the name, but it's the song I love, but I've drawn a blank. Wheel and Sky.
Yeah.
I had this cassette in about 70.
You sure it wasn't? Or were we into cassettes by then?
I was playing them in my car. Let's see. Yeah, what would I have been playing that on?
They might have been cassettes
I think it
by
was just barely.
1980.
I was on the cutting edge back in the day.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Cassette.
I'm gonna believe it
kidding.
was cassettes. 8 tracks were maybe a little earlier.
Yeah.
All right.
I still have my lot of 8 tracks, and I don't recall the Journey being. You know, actually, that might have been on that 8 track. I should have looked. I might have had that at home still. Oops.
All right. So like I said, this is not a song by Steve Perry, and he didn't necessarily write all of Journey's songs. He wrote on a lot of them, but he was just part of Journey once he came in. They had many writers. So this was by Fleischman and Neil Schon, the lead guitarist. Also, Valerie, their bassist. But anyway, this song hit hard on the radio. I remember hearing it and just being amazed with it, and just was in love with Journey from then on.
Well, and with this song, it kind of set a new tone for him and a new pathway.
Yeah,
It started a new direction.
It
which
did.
some people liked, some people didn't.
Yeah, for sure. You're right. There was many people believing that Journey was going the wrong way. Journey had already sounded a different way. Journey didn't sound like this. Especially they didn't sound like the other songs we just previewed. And so even Rolling Stone had gave him a horrible review about how horrible they sounded, and poppy even, they called it. So back to Neil Schon, their guitarist, who, whenever you see the top 10 guitarists in the world, he's not mentioned, which is a shame, because I've seen him in concert many times, and nobody plays guitar like him. When he was 15 years old, he was discovered by Greg Raleigh. Greg Raleigh said, well, I would go to his high school and get him. He wasn't really in high school, but he was there, and I would take him, and we would go play and jam, and then they ended up with Santana, and they started Santana, and Neil Schon was 15 years old. So that's pretty amazing. Well, anyway, so these 5 songs are 5 we picked from Infinity. The whole album was good. Couple of songs a lot of people don't like. They were a little too jivey, but The whole album's great. All right, next track, please.
See the stoplight turning red. Don't you listen to what it said. All the things you try to hide, they keep you running hard inside.
All right, this one is Too Late. Wasn't a hit, but it's a personal Cap and Kirk favorite. It's from Evolution, 1979, 1 year after Infinity. And this is the album that had their biggest hit at the time, called Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin'. We'll play it next.
You're tearing me apart. Every day you're tearing me apart. Oh, what can I say?
If you don't know what this song is, then you didn't grow up and be a teenager or a 20-something in 1980. Because this was literally, this song surpassed Will in the Sky big time with radio play. And it was Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin'. This, as many of their songs was wrote about actual experiences. Perry wrote this one once he saw his girlfriend in the arms of another guy kissing him. So Perry wrote this song about how people step out on people, and then he was basically wishing that someday she could feel the way he did then. Classic song. I remember singing it at the top of my lungs way too many times back then. I did.
Give us about. No?
Not just after I ate caramels.
Warm up first. Yeah, good point. Caramel's good excuse.
Well, the music of Journey really defined the rock and roll sound of the late 1970s and 80s. So, I mean, they were the pioneer of it.
Journey began changing the sound of all music. That's why a lot of people didn't like it, because they seemed to go from one hit to another, and they were crooning songs, and that type of thing hadn't been around. And they would say, well, Journey, you're just after the hits, after the money. And they were like, maybe we were. What's wrong with that?
Well, Queen kind of brought in more opera, as we talked last time. These guys have more of a jazz feel and approach to things.
That's what I was going to say. The genre then was so big with Queen. You had Jefferson Starship, Santana.
Yeah.
And they were
Journey
all
going.
hooked together. These guys hired Queen's old producer. Right when they got popular.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, here's the part I love, right here. All right, let's all sing it. You ready, Mr. Porter?
I hope so.
Na 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 na. And thank you, Boston, for joining in.
It was that bad, huh?
Does not like it.
He's like, that is enough of that. That's
It's hurting his ears.
not right.
He is still wagging
Like
his tail.
Superchamp would say, not quite right.
Not quite right.
Not quite right. Hey.
I think it's bloody well right.
Oh, no, they had a song where they literally said not quite right in the song. There was the song where they sang bloody right.
Boston's going to
lot.
sing it right to the end.
He was saying Does anybody wonder where Avril Lavigne learned how to sing na 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 a whole bunch? Because her songs, she literally... By the way, everybody, Avril Lavigne has a new song out, just came out 2 days ago. It's amazing. It sounds retro, like Rihanna's one from a year or two ago. Why can't I remember the name of it? But it was so retro. Something about love. Oh, gosh, you can't remember, can you, Lola? Rihanna had the neatest song, but it sounded like 60s stuff. And I just don't know what it was. Anyway, now Avril's put one out, and I'm so excited. Anyway, all right. Definitely Avril grew up listening to Journey and all the other big bands. I did want to mention also, this is When You're Alone, It Ain't Easy.
It ain't always easy, moving day to day. She said she wants to tease me, so I'm on my way.
But everybody always knows that when you're alone, it ain't easy. Yeah. When Steve Perry was going to be a turkey farmer, his mother told him, no, you're a singer. You need to be a singer. I promise you, you need to be a singer. And that is how he ended up, just on a whim, giving that CD to that Herbie Herbert. So we have Steve Perry's mother to thank for our journey. All right, let's just go to the next track. So I've been playing a lot of my favorites off Evolution. In actuality, that whole album is a favorite. So's Infinity. Every track, except a couple of maybe harsher ones. And this track, I just couldn't resist. I had to put it in. Sweet and Simple. Another really interesting fact. So here we are. 1980, they're getting really big. Steve Perry has been with them 3 years, and he still feels like he's not in the band. He feels like the original ones that were there are a family, and he's an outsider. So he's already got this thing going on where he doesn't feel right, and the others are like, are you kidding me? We would do whatever he said. We were following him. We don't know why he feels like that. We were hanging out with him in the early days when he started in the band. He was literally living at Raleigh's house and Sean's house. They just living there. So no one can quite figure that out, but it's interesting. An early dynamic.
I was gonna say, and when he went off to do his own, in the same time period, did some of his own solo stuff, but also so did Sean, the guitarist.
Yep, just in a few years they did. Yep, and so this was, and we'll talk about it when we get to that time, hopefully. But it's not. They get super successful. Right. You would think they were really successful at Evolution, but they just kept getting more and more. So yeah, let's go to the next track. This is Just the Same Way.
Yeah, that's the same way you love me. That's the same way she loves you. Just the same way you do. Just the same way you do.
Another favorite of mine where Greg Raleigh is singing lead. When Evolution started, they also had to fire their drummer and their
yeah, I love this song. One of my favorites.
basically they just had to fire a guy from Britain that was his last name was Ainsley, and they went to Steve Smith. Ainsley was believing they were not playing fast enough. He wanted more in the songs, more of the old sound. So down the road he went, because at the same time they were having heavy they were selling out stadiums. They were one of the first big stadium bands. Besides, they were playing huge stadium tours by now. Queen was doing stadium tours. Journey, so they got rid of their drummer. They got another one. And 1980, they had their next album come out.
Any way you want it, that's the way you need it. Any way you want it. She loves to laugh, she loves to sing, she does everything.
This is Departure is the name of the album. Any Way You Want It. So this album was a big hit. We're just gonna play 3 songs off of it. Any Way You Want It would be their biggest song off of this album. And they were getting bigger and bigger, and Raleigh decided they were going the wrong direction, and for the second time in his career, he left the band right at their peak. So now their manager, Herbie Herbert, had to fill Raleigh's shoes, and Raleigh actually recommended Jonathan Cain, who was a great pianist, keyboardist. He had been in the Babies with John Waite. So he came on board, Raleigh left. Cain had a song he had wrote that the Babies and John Waite didn't want and didn't like. The song was called Open Arms. So we're gonna get into it later because that's in the next album. This is a Cap'n Kirk favorite, not a hit. It's called Precious Time. Does anybody have any time that's precious to them?
Who has time?
Yeah. Here is Stay a While. I like to call it I'd Do Anything.
I'd do anything to hold you. I'd go anywhere to touch you.
It's a love song. You ever been in love, Brianna? What? Not even with your mom? Oh, good.
Don't bother. It's painful.
Want me to, if you just stay with me a while.
Kirk
All
knows
right.
his words pretty good.
Next track. We've been talking about their super album, Escape, without mentioning it. So here it is. This is the song, Don't Stop Believing.
Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard, their shadows searching in the night.
From their 1981 Escape album that finally propelled them to the top of the business.
Yes.
It also became a real anthem for a lot of
Yeah.
It did.
Hollywood movies,
It
Broadway
became
shows.
very sad for Mr. Professor Plum, actually, because I miss Glee television show.
I don't miss Glee. It's a karaoke show. How do you like that?
Oh,
How do you like
cuts.
those apples?
Oh, that cuts.
I like it because I grew up listening to this. I was married, I was having problems, but I didn't stop believing. This was like an anthem, like you were saying, back in the 80s. This was big. I remember this album. I had this album. Geez, I feel like it was an 8-track. I don't know, but my wife lent it to her little sister, and I was thinking, why would she like Journey? But now I realize it's because Journey had gotten so mainstream that younger kids were loving it.
Maybe we do need some video recording.
We probably should have been videoing him out a little bit tonight. There seems to be kind of two parallel shows going on. there's this Captain Kirk show and a clown
Professor
show going on.
Plum should have drank just a little bit more booze before he showed up. All right. So
You're the one that mentioned karaoke. I guess that's what
more
prodded
statistics
me
about
on.
this
Egged me
song.
on.
This song was the most downloaded song from the 20th century. Clear until just barely recently. And then because of the movie Bohemian Rhapsody just passed it. And now it's the most downloaded song of the 20th century. So, pretty cool. Escape, the album, sold 8 million albums. Like Lola, you were saying, critics were hating Journey.
It's funny because some of them will say, like, Escape was the worst album that they had, but...
And it was their most popular album. Yeah. But have you ever noticed that? There'll be a good movie, the critics will say it sucks. That's why they're called critics. I'm not sure what they know. At this point in time, Journey had pioneered big screens on the stage. Giant stage setups, fantastic lights. They would sell out stadiums 3 and 4 nights in a row in the same city. It was really unheard of. So they were big.
During that time, they had like 40 singles that actually were in the top 40 or top 10. It looks like they were right behind. Electric Light Orchestra was right behind.
Oh, that statistic is they had
18.
they had
40s.
18 top 20 songs, but never a number one. Ever. Never a number one. And ELO had 20 songs that were singles that were in the top 20 and never a number one. It's quite amazing.
Crazy.
I mean, nowadays you have a song like Don't Stop Believing. You're going to sit at number one like the Imagine Dragons does for like 10 weeks.
Yep.
And then you're going to, so times have changed, but there was a lot of music out then. A lot of good music. So we're on to the next song, Stone in Love. Another one that got good radio play off of Escape.
Those summer nights are calling, stone in love. Can't help myself from falling, stone in love.
And now this is Who's Crying Now.
One love feeds the fire, one heart does decide, one love who's crying now.
And I remember this being on the radio so much. I was working on my jobs and this song would always be playing, it seemed like. But the back scene was a lot of things going wrong with the band. But how often do we hear that? The more popular a band gets, the more crazy behind the scenes things there are going on. So I don't know who was crying now. It might have been Mr. Porter.
That's constant state.
All right. Next track. I've mentioned this one already. Here is Open Arms.
So here I am with open arms, hoping you'll see what your love means to me. Open arms.
So, like I said, they changed organist, pianist, and Kane.
You probably
came
even know
in.
this song, don't you?
And
You don't recognize it yet?
so when Kane came in, he had this song, Open Arms. Neil Schon, the lead guitarist, said, I hate this song. We're not going to do it. It is a bummer. And it was, if you'll notice, a little even more mellower than anything Journey had done. They finally talked him into doing it. They went and they did their first concert to a big stadium with this song, and the crowd went wild. The women, I saw footage, they were literally singing and crying, and it was so amazing, and the band felt it, and Neil Schon was like, I just can't believe it. I just couldn't believe the way they felt. And then this song became their number 2 on the charts, their highest charting song, and it is credited as being the first power ballad of the time, which started it being all right for even bands like later Def Leppard could stop and sing a mellow song. It was okay to do that now after this song. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, Mr. Porter.
Living Alone.
It's about you. All right. Next track.
You never call me up when I'm alone at night. What can this poor boy do when he's hopelessly in love with you?
This is a Cap'n Kirk favorite. I don't know. I'm assuming big Journey fans will remember this. It only was on their Captured CD, which was a live album. So that album had all these other songs on it that we've just been playing. But this is the only place you could get this song. It was on the radio a little bit. I have a history where I think back about a certain time in my life to this song. So this song made our track list, and it's called The Party's Over or Hopelessly in Love. Has anybody ever been hopelessly in love? And they maybe even know they shouldn't be, but what the hell can they do about it? They're hopelessly in love.
Been a
Let's
while.
not talk about that.
Been forgotten, I guess. I guess that's
All right. So it has a couple different parts in it. We don't have time to play them all. If you don't know this song and you're a music lover, you better download it. It will not disappoint. Okay, so this is Separate Ways. This is off of Frontiers, another big album.
Someday love will find you. Break those chains that bind you. One night will remind you. Oh, we touched the rail, separate ways.
In fact, I can't tell on my notes, but I think Frontiers actually outsold Escape. Wasn't as good, I'm sorry, but Journey was getting bigger. So their new albums were selling better than their old ones. So, but definitely this song, Separate Ways, was all over the radio. big time. And it was another song wrote about personal things going on. I believe Perry wrote it, and it was about two different band members going through divorce. Reminds me a little of Fleetwood Mac. Their best songs were wrote about their personal turmoil. So, let's see. We have another one off of Frontiers. Go ahead and hit the next one. Frontiers is from 1983. This is Send Her My Love.
During this album, Journey had become like one of the top bands, top recording at that time during the world.
Yeah.
With just this one album.
Yeah. That's what's weird. I mean, I had the album. We've taken the songs off of my album, but for me, the previous 4 albums were all better. But here we have their best-selling album up to date.
They say this one is the best, and the other 3 were like amongst the worst.
Yeah.
Amongst critics
it doesn't
and
make
Rolling
sense.
Stone.
So here is another just giant song, Faithfully.
Oh, girl, you stand by me. I'm forever yours. Faithfully.
This is the 8th top 20 song they had since Steve Perry started. It was wrote by Jonathan Cain about his wife. It's kind of talking about going on tour, being away from your wife and your family, and how they faithfully wait for you to come back. And it's pretty deep. Right, you were talking about Frontiers. I see here it sold 6 million copies and became the number 2 album on the charts at the time, which was their, like you said, Lola, their highest selling album to date. At this time, though, the band got really troubled. Perry, who said he was never feeling like he was part of the band, and yet he was really the band. I mean, they were all the band, but he was their lead singer, and they went his direction. He felt distant. He was also losing his girlfriend at the time, Sherry. So he went out, and she came on the road with him a lot. And him and her had a motorhome. And right after the concert was over, he would want some alone time with Sherry. So rather than meeting the crowd, he would just take off. And the rest of the band was like, we don't like this. Here's the crowd. We're meeting everybody at the end of the concert, and you just roll off, you know? So it was like many bands do. Just weird little things are starting to separate them, you know? And so anyway, they got further and further apart. So they started recording separately. First, Neil Schon went out and did some stuff. It didn't sound like Journey. It was a direction he wanted to go. So then Steve was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. Well, that made Neil Schon mad because the songs Perry did sounded like Journey. Oh, Sherry. Later, what was the next one? Foolish Heart. They literally sounded like Journey. I mean, and there was no Journey. So I remember buying Steve Perry's stuff, you know. So it really gave them a riff. Then they got back together in 86. That was in 85. 85 also. So Perry came back to Journey. The producers, this was back in the time where there were drum machines. There was what was the other thing? They had bass machines, just kind of playing bass. But yet the drummer and the bassist are supposed to play, but they're supposed to sound like these machines. They got really upset, so they didn't like it and they got fired. That was Steve Smith and Ross Valerie. So now Journey's just down to 3 guys: Neil Schon, Jonathan Cain, Steve Perry. They did the album Raised on Radio, and that had 4 top 20 hits. This is Only the Young. Great story behind it. There was a young boy that had cystic fibrosis. He was dying. He was in constant pain. His mother, he loved Journey, absolutely adored him. His mother sent a letter to Journey and told them about him and said, he's dying and his dying wish is to see you guys. They flew to his bedside at a hospital and they previewed this song, Only the Young. His name was Kenny. And Kenny was the first person other than the band to hear this song. And they had a Walkman and they played it for him in his room. And Kenny died the next day.
Wow.
And Jonathan Cain was crying, talking about it. And he said, wow, I learned what's important in life. And it was amazing. Amazing seeing Jonathan Cain crying, talking about this. So that's the cool story behind Only the Young. This is I'll Be Alright Without You.
I'll be alright without you. Maybe someone else. I keep telling myself I'll be alright without you.
Mr. Porter sang it to his ex
Yes.
as he flipped her off and
Mr.
went
Mello.
down the road.
Yes, that's right. Which time?
Which ex? Lola's done this to her ex, flipped him off and said, I'll be alright without you.
There you go.
She may not have sang this exact song.
Robot voice, so we patch it in.
She might have sang Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin' as she
Might
screamed
have added
off.
some extra lyrics.
I was going to say she was singing it as they were driving off, because why would she leave? She's salad.
They kicked her out of their house, and she was like, wait a minute. That's my house. I'm staying. You're leaving.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That could be the name of the song.
I used to
Wait a
have
minute.
times I'd get kicked out of my house. I'd walk for a mile and I'd be like, where the hell am I going? I'd just go back. I was kind of a leech. All right, another great hit. Girl Can't Help It. I know this song. I mean, I've heard it so much, yet the title, I was like, what song is that? You know, it's we took it off of the Greatest Hits album, which had, in my opinion, their later songs, which I guess may have been their greatest hits, but it definitely wasn't their best music, in my opinion. A little trivia about Greatest Hits, it's their best-selling album. It came out in 1988. It still sells 500,000 to 1 million units a year. It's one of the top greatest hits compilations for sales there ever has been. So, what do I know? Apparently, it's got a lot of good music on it. Stop tossing stuff, Mr. Porter.
This is the Professor Plum. He's here to You're torturing these
Freaking Professor Plum.
You're torturing these contestants.
There's no way they can eat those after rolling on this dirty thing that's been on this table for 92 years.
Good point. Well, I would. So
Here's blow the dust
pass them
off.
back.
It's safe. It's just dust. Where we live, if you can't eat dust, then you might as well not eat food. Now we are to the last song before they broke up. Their last hit. Go ahead and hit it. Thanks, Lola. This is Be Good to Yourself. That's what I always say. You can go ahead and beat up anybody that pisses you off. You can kick them, scream at them, but you might as well be good to yourself.
May as well.
Because if you can't be good to yourself, who the heck can you be good to?
That sounds healthy to relationships, too.
This is a very healthy attitude I've got. So, at this point in time, they were super hot. They had 4 top 20 hits off of Raised on Radio. They had a tour going. Steve Perry went home. His mom was dying, and he literally held her in his arms while she died, and he saw her go. And he was like, I'm toast. I'm not getting the joy out of music. I just heard Steve Perry talking about this. He just put out a new solo album 30 years after that. So I've heard interviews from him, and he said, I literally felt like I was disconnected. I felt like nothing was right. I didn't feel anything was right. Life wasn't right. So, like another member of his band, he walked away. They had to cancel the tour. And Journey disappeared right when they were at the height of their fame. And they barely spoke for years. Jonathan Cain and Neil Schon, the organist and the guitarist, went to John Waite's band, and they formed a little band called Bad English that had a hit called When I See You Smile.
When I see you smile.
And that is how it went. Herbie got fired as they decided to get back together. Perry came back. They decided to get back together. They got Ross Valerie back. They got Steve Smith, the drummer, back. Ross Valerie was their bassist. They had the original 5 guys back together from their Frontiers and Escape time, which was really some of their best times. So they did an album called Trial by Fire. And they literally wrote 12 songs in 2 weeks. Neil Schon and Perry did. Trial by Fire came out, and it went straight to number 3. It had When You Love a Woman. Let's play a track from it, Lola. Cap and Kirk decided we needed a little bit more upbeat song than When You Love a Woman. Might be a bad choice, because what's better than loving a woman? Bad choice, Cap'n. Anyway, here is Message of Love. So yeah, When You Love a Woman was their top song from this album. It went straight to number 3. This was another single, Message of Love. So they had got together. They had another concert tour planned. Steve was out of shape. I believe he was in Hawaii, and he was going to start hiking and working out to get in shape. He hiked up into the mountains and had his hip go out on him. and had to call for help to get him out of there. And he was in horrid pain, and he called his band members and he says, "I'm in horrible pain. I'm not going to be able to perform." They found out he had degenerative bone disease. The band kept begging him to get hip surgery to heal it. He was worried about having hip surgery. He didn't know what to do. He just kept waiting and waiting. After 13 months, the band went and told him, Neil Schon personally went and told Steve, "We can't wait any longer. We have to move on." And Steve begged him. He literally, I saw Steve talking about it, and he said, "I begged him, go on, do anything, just don't call yourself Journey. I'll be back. Don't fracture Journey." But they, of course, Journey was who was popular, and they were the founders, so they went on without him. By 2001, they found a guy named Steve Augeri. I went and saw him in concert. They put out an album called Arrival. It was quite good. Gary could sing and could darn near sing as well as Steve Perry, except the band was playing their music too loud, and he was almost sounded like the louder they got, the more he had to almost scream to be heard. No one said this, I'm saying it. They literally caused his vocal cords to get infected, and he eventually had to leave the band. That's my theory, because I saw him twice in concert, and the last time they were way too loud. But they're not the only ones that do that. That's a Cap and Kirk
Yeah, that's the
peeve
truth. Yeah, you're not
anymore.
kidding.
You want to see somebody not play too loud but sound rocky, go see the Eagles, go see Fleetwood Mac. The vocals come through. Go see REO Speedwagon. Okay? So that leads us to their new singer, Arnel Pineda. I don't know exactly how to... Pineda. He's a Filipino. He can kind of sing the lyrics. He can kind of sing the loud notes. Some people think it's great. That's because Journey's music's great. I'm sorry. He can't sing like Steve Perry could. Enough said. All right.
Before he came on, they actually were abducted into the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That was in January of 2005.
Yeah?
Journeys
so that
received
would have
their-
been when Guerra was with them.
Yep.
I feel
That
like
was their
he
30th.
actually sounded more like Steve Perry, because I've seen them both in concert. I see some really good footage of Arnel. He keeps them going. He's kept Journey alive at the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The main Journey people, there was about 7 of them that was from when the band was big. And Steve Perry literally thanked Arnel for all he does for keeping the band going and singing, and gave him praise, and it was awesome. So, yeah, that's Journey. I told you I was going to talk a little bit about Steve Perry's new album. I got it. If you love hearing Steve Perry sing, you will love the album. If you want it to sound like Journey, you will not like the album. It has good vocals, it has good lyrics. It's not Journey, it's Steve Perry. He's back, he can still sing. So if you love his voice, go get it. It's not bad. Poor old Steve just lost his wife, I believe, to cancer. I heard a lot of interviews with him. She had been talking to him about getting back into music. And so after she died, I think he might have had some of these songs going. He's done this album. If you like Steve Perry, get it.
We claim
First track was No Erasing. Steve Perry's been pushing it as a single. I like the second track better. Hand me that CD under your phone. The one with naked girls on it. I didn't say that. This one I find this highly annoying. It doesn't put the tracks on the back. It has pretty good art.
The shadows falling, the night is calling out, yeah. We're still here, when love is running, the night is calling out, yeah.
Steve's voice sounds a tiny bit harsher than it used to, but he's got all kinds of range, all kinds of clarity. It's good to see him back.
Yeah, I agree. Saw him on America's Got Talent for a second.
So, everybody, we love that you listen to our podcast. We love that you love music. We love music. I don't know music any better than you do. What you love is perfect. I always say, and it's my Sheryl Crow motto, if it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. So whatever you think sounds good, it is good. And I love you, fans. So, to Raz, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Lola,
Glad to be here.
Yes,
Mr.
looking at
Porter,
glad to be here. Think the recorder went well today.
Professor Plum,
Yes, Professor Plum is a little bit 3 feet to the wind,
as usual.
as usual.
Brianna, thank you for coming. She hasn't got a mic, but she said you're welcome. Our music's a little too loud, so we'll cut it off and have a little goodbye lick from our famous guitar licker, Mr. Godby.